Hello everyone, I just wanted to post a video here, I think explaining how World of Warcraft got to its current state of shambles. This isn't usually what I post on this channel. Obviously it's usually just, you know, um, clips from our raid kills that we can use for recruitment and just to show that, hey, we are a casual heroic guild, but we can also clear content. So, so if you like this video, do not subscribe to my channel because I do not put out videos like this. If you do like it, I would instead ask that you share it on social media, Twitter, Facebook, your guild Discord, or Twitch, or share it with other WoW influencers who can react or discuss it or whatever. So anyway, let's get into it. So I think in order to understand the present, you don't just look back in the past. You go back to the past and you look forward from the perspective of the people in the past. And that sounds a little abstract, but I'll bring it down to something concrete here. But basically, if you look back, from your present perspective, you're not going to understand how or why things came about. You're just going to see mistakes that people made. And those mistakes, quote unquote, are only mistakes in hindsight once the consequences of the decisions, played themselves out. When in reality, in the moment, they were just making decisions. They had no idea, whether or not they would be mistakes. So sometimes this is hard. Like, for instance, if you wanted to understand the American Civil War, there's no one alive from that period that you can just go and talk to and ask and learn the perspective. You have to reconstruct it as best you can from writings from professors and scholars, or documents from that era. You kind of have to reconstruct it yourself. No one's gonna is actually around to tell you exactly what was going on there. But fortunately, in the case of WoW, this is pretty easy to do because there are plenty of people like me who are still around who have seen how the game has evolved over time. And so this video, I'm just going to share my perspective of how I think this game has evolved and why it's gotten to its current state of basically shambles. So I think in order to understand the original design in World of Warcraft Vanilla or /Classic, is you have to go back to how RPGs were designed before the World of Warcraft was originally released in 2004. Because that was the design that the original developers of World of Warcraft had in mind when they were designing World of Warcraft. And so basically, pre-WoW, RPGs were basically designed to be punishing. And you can see this even in a game like Diablo 2, which is probably one of the least punishing games, but they had things like a stamina mechanic where your character could only run at full speed for a certain period of time before they ran out of stamina and had to walk. You also see this in things like experience loss when you die. And if you would die enough in Diablo 2, you could possibly lose all your items. They would just basically pop out of your corpse and they would be on the ground, free for anybody and everybody to take. So, and there were just a lot of other, things that were just really, really punishing and made the game, overall frustrating to progress in. And so they countered this kind of punishment, of this punishment aspect of the game with fun, which is something we've not had a lot of in World of Warcraft lately. And so we'll stick with sticking with Diablo 2, for example, this punishment was, the punishing parts of the game were counteracted with, these fun abilities. Like, so in Diablo 2, it was, I think one of the most fun, builds slash classes I had in that game is the Whirlwind Barbarian. And, Whirlwind was, an ability that I wanted to press that button as much as possible for as long as I could, and so I built my character. I got him some life leech and some mana leech, so I could, just basically just spam that button as much as possible and, kill as many things as I could with that one ability. Similarly, like, on Amazon, if you made an Amazon with, guided arrow or whatever that multi-arrow ability was, or sorceress with frozen orb, or firewall before they nerfed firewall. It's unfortunate, but so the classes in like a game like Diablo 2, they don't have a whole lot of abilities, but the abilities they have are fun, and you want to press them, as much as possible. So WoW originally came about in this kind of era where RPGs were punishing, very, very punishing, some more punishing than others, but they counteracted that those punishing aspects with fun, and the fun was usually bound up in a couple of abilities, but they were simple, but they were fun, and you wanted to use these abilities as much as possible. And so WoW comes along, and it took away a lot of the punishing parts of the game, like death penalties, for example. Like when you die in World of Warcraft, you don't lose experience. You just, you go to the spirit healer, and you get teleported there. You run back, you find your corpse, and you move on with, your adventures. You don't need to worry about dying a lot in a short period of time and losing all your items either, which is very useful in a situation like I was on a PvP server, leveling through Stranglethorn, Vietnam, when you basically had these huge battles break out between Alliance and Horde, and you were dying quite a bit in a very short period of time. And you can see this, vanilla definitely has punishing aspects of it still. They didn't eliminate all of them. Like, you still had the grind of, leveling, for instance, took a while. It was not like how it was in, when WoW Classic released, because when we played, us original players played vanilla, we had no idea what we were doing. No one told us how the most efficient way to level, where should we level. Like, there was, eventually, guides like Joanna's came out and basically showed us, like, hey, go here, do this, do this, do this, but at the beginning, this wasn't so, but that grind, that took a while. It took about 2 weeks, I think, /played for us, noobs who didn't know what we were doing to get to level 60, but that was counteracted with fun abilities. So, like, for instance, on this mage, here, leveling up, like, Fireball was a spell that you wanted to use Fireball. Like, it was something that you wanted to press because it was a good ability. It was fun. The 3-second wait for that spell to go off was worth it because, when you saw it take off a quarter or more of, the mob's health, plus if it crit, then you got ignite. You got 2 big ignite ticks, which were, if you had the talent max, was 40%, I believe, of whatever you crit for. So, so that was, the fun of the game was, the grind was counteracted by this fun, basically. And so you wanted to use these abilities as much as possible. if another grind was the High Warlord grind, which you can see I did on this character. Scorch and Fire Blast were the two main spells I used for the most part in PvP, aside from the Trinket, Presence of Mind, Pyroblast combo, which I didn't actually use a whole lot. I used it more as like an execute ability. Most of my damage was from Scorch and Fire Blast spam, but that combo was fun, especially with the impact talent, which gave fire spells a chance to stun. That procced quite a bit, even after they nerfed it. But that was, for me at least, was a fun experience. I don't think being on the other end of it was, really fun, but that's another story. But those abilities were fun. Like, I wanted to press those abilities as much as possible because they were really fun, and it made the grind enjoyable. And eventually I completed the grind. I got that rank, that the High Warlord rank there, and so that's how they, and that's basically how WoW was designed. It kept a lot of the fun of the RPGs of progressing through like this grind, but they kept all the abilities. They had a few abilities, simple abilities that were really fun. And they also, and the power progression was, every level, you progressed, you had, you gained at least a little bit of power, and at least in form of, talent points and stat points. You got more health, you got more mana, or if you had mana, you got more mana. And then you got talent points, you got, at least a little bit stronger each level. And it was simple. That was kind of simple. And then once you got to max level, your power progression was just through gear. And at least the way it worked in back in vanilla, and I think even through BC and Wrath, was that the gear was pretty. The kind of nickname we had for the game was World of Gearcraft, because it was like, it was so much power progression tied up in gear, and between I don't want to go to Q to the different tiers and raids, and there was a lot, that was where it was tied up in. It was, it wasn't the best system, but it was, I think effective. Like, it made the game, fun, and, it made it enjoyable for people who really wanted to progress their character and be, the absolute strongest. So overall, it was a really good design at the time when it was released. It worked. You could, we still, at the time, expected RPGs to be punishing, but we expected fun, and WoW did a pretty good job of, removing the annoyingly punishing things like death penalties, but keeping all the fun of the RPG in the form of like these, these really fun spells and abilities that you wanted to push and use as much as possible. But there were some problems with the original design, and I think the biggest one is that it wasn't designed to scale. Like, it was, if you go back and you read on the Internet Archive, some of the, developer expectations as to, when, how long they think the game will last, you'll see is about 3 to 5 years, which is basically the end of Wrath of the Lich King, is basically how long they expected the game to last. And so they didn't, the core design was not designed with scaling for 15 years in mind. It was designed with like, okay, this game's going to last, maybe 5 years, so, we won't look too much at scalability, we'll just look at, how fun things are, and then we'll, we don't have to worry about scaling it very, very long, because it's not going to last that long. That was their expectation. Problem is, this didn't happen. Like, the game grew steadily over the time that vanilla was released through Wrath of the Lich King. Like, it grew steadily, and by the time the end of the Wrath was around, they had like 10 to 11 million subscribers, to the game. This numbers might have been fudged a little bit, I think, but it was still, a significant number of players. And so this ran into a certain problem. And so they ran into some problems with these, with certain things, because they weren't designed. Certain systems weren't designed to scale. Like professions, for instance, which I believe they changed in Legion to now be expansion by expansion. But before then, like if you played a character, from vanilla through Wrath, and at the beginning of Wrath, you just if you were like a tailor / enchanter, and you decided you wanted to be herbalism and alchemy, you had to go back, and you had to go back to unlearn your professions, go back to freaking Mulgore, and start picking Peace Bloom. You have to level up your herbalism. And that's what you had to do to level your professions. And it didn't, so if the game was ending in Wrath, that would be kind of annoying, but it's not something that you're going to fix, because if you're thinking the game's going to end after Wrath. A more impactful thing was talent trees, the old talent trees. They were not designed to scale 15 years. They were designed to scale. They weren't designed to scale at all, period, I don't think. Because by the time they got to Wrath, these trees were bloated, and they were unruly, and they were a mess. Just because they weren't, that was not their intent, was to, last 15 years. It could last, they could have lasted as long as they lasted, which was to Wrath, and that was it. After that, you couldn't have had those things in Cataclysm. Like, there's no way that would have worked, at least not very well. And so what they did is they had to kind of rework and streamline some things, like the talent trees. So now in your talent trees you have these rows of talents. Instead of a tree, you just have a row, and every so many levels you get a point, and you can put it somewhere. And so they had the and not only that too, but they switched to specializations, and so now things that were, talents that were fun, like water elemental, for instance, became, baseline abilities. Same with fire, with, I guess they don't have Ignite up here. But Ignite is, baseline for, for fire, because it was one of the fun things about the spec. It was one of the iconic abilities, and, and so the benefit of that was you got things more streamlined. Someone wanted to play, like a mage. They didn't have to wait for 60 levels to start feeling like a mage and feeling powerful. They could, kind of do it from the beginning. They could more or less feel, get a feel for that class pretty early on. And so, it kind of streamlined things, kind of made things a little more scalable, but it eliminated an important part of player power progression, and also important element of what made the game fun. So like when the talent trees were there in vanilla through Wrath, like you leveled, you got a new talent point. You could get a little bit more powerful each level. There was something at each level you gained that you could look forward to. That you could look forward to, and there were certain talents where you could that were really good. You're like, okay, I want, to get this talent, so like maybe Shadow Form for like a Shadow Priest, like, you wanted to, that kept you motivated because you knew that ability was really good, and, it would make your experience a lot better, and, you really look forward to having it. And so it kind of, once they streamlined everything, it kind of removed, that sense of power progression that you could get, that was fun, that made you feel like you were getting more powerful each level. That kind of, it kept you motivated to keep leveling, it kind of removed that. And I think this is basically the problem that World of Warcraft faces. Modern World of Warcraft faces is is balancing the power progression systems against scalability, because I think the RPG genre demands power progression. Like, that's part of the fun of an RPG, is to progress a character from a level 1, can't do hardly anything, to this great champion of whatever faction, whatever thing. So and but but the problem with these power progression systems is that they can only progress so far. They only scale to a certain level, so you're trying to more or less try to balance this with progression versus scalability. You're trying to keep those, and it's trying to balance those out, and it's hard to really balance those, I think. So this is the problem I think that modern WoW runs into a lot. And when I talk about modern WoW, I'm going to limit myself to everything Legion and past, mainly for a couple of reasons. One is because I didn't play from between Cataclysm and basically through WoD. I basically picked up kind of at the end of Legion, and so I'm not going to comment on expansions I didn't play. And also, because I think modern WoW's problems really start with Legion, and so Legion, from my at least from what I've been able to understand, was it was very class focused expansion. They had the class order halls. A lot of the time in development went into classes, and so this resulted in you put a lot of development time on a feature. The feature ends up being really good. Seems like a logical outcome, or it should be a logical outcome. And so that's what as far as I understand, for the most part of Legion, people were pretty happy overall with the classes, not so much with the RNG legendary system, but because that's another story. And so at the end of Legion, though, and even like the artifact weapons were part of the classes, of the experience, and they kind of designed and built the classes around these artifact weapons. And the mistake I think they made with Legion was they eliminated the artifact weapons that they designed the classes around, but they didn't redesign the classes to compensate. And and just carrying over certain abilities is not a redesign of a class. That resulted in what we got in BFA, which was basically half-baked classes. And they still have yet to recover from this decision. I think I don't think they've recovered from it. Classes, I think, are still overall, they're broken and they're not fun and they're half-baked. Like, I don't have a button that I want to press a lot. They all equally suck. Like, sorry, that's just the way it is. They're just all equally bad, and they all feel equally bad. And what's kind of frustrating is that when you break these systems, each expansion, someone who maybe, by the end of BFA, someone who maybe like me, like, I played a fire mage at, throughout the entirety of BFA, and it was an absolutely awful experience at the beginning of the expansion, before you got Memory of Lucid Dreams as the Azerite essence. Like, essences in general, I think, saved that expansion. because there were a lot of problems with the classes and essences. I don't know, I can't comment on a whole lot of other classes, but at least for a fire, like a fire mage, they made the class feel fun again, at least. Like, just that Memory of Lucid Dreams essence, not even like the Mecha Gun Bracers, like, were not, you know, they were kind of like a nice addition, but they weren't like, you know, mandatory, you know, for the class to feel fun. Like, you know, because fire, even now, is all the damage is tied up in combustion, and how much damage you do in a fight depends a lot on how well you execute your combustion phase and how much damage you can get out of that phase. And Memory of Lucid Dreams, you know, finally gave us enough Fire Blast charges that we could get through those 10 seconds, basically, you know, with, you know, Fire Blast, Pyroblast, Fire Blast, Pyroblast, kind of alternating between them. So, and you know, but and then in Shadowlands, though, they just got rid of, you know, essences, and you know, and so now fire's back to, I think, an unplayable state. Like, I would never play a fire mage ever in Shadowlands because it's just too awful. And so I think what it seems to be that the developers are doing, you know, instead of, you know, tackling this problem of scalability versus fun, it seems like they've decided to solve it with, you know, looking at making the game more immersive, like looking at it from an immersion perspective. You know, so things like the artifact weapons, you know, in Legion, you know, were just, you know, they were designed, you know, to kind of immerse you more in that world of, you know, being a champion of the class Order Hall and having this great weapon, you know, this great kind of iconic, you know, historical weapon from the Warcraft universe, basically. You know, Azerite, you know, and you know, the Heart of Azeroth was also, you know, it was kind of a half-baked attempt at that, really. I don't know if it was even half-baked, maybe like a quarter-baked or something, or three-quarter-baked. I don't know how the scaling on that works, but you know, it just wasn't, you know, a good, you know, replication of that, you know, especially after they basically gutted the classes by breaking the artifact weapons. You know, but it was you know, and you know, it was supposed to, I think, you know, add to the immersion of the expansion of, you know, basically helping, you know, Azeroth, you know, the planet, kind of heal after getting stabbed by that giant sword that you saw on Silithus a while back on this loop around Kalimdor. You know, that's how it was. What's that? Oh. You know, it was kind of designed to add to that immersion, and then, you know, so Shadowlands, now we have, you know, the Soulbind system, and, you know, it's probably, it seems to be designed to add to the immersion of your experience in Shadowlands, you know, because other characters have Soulbinds, you know, so you have a Soulbind, and I guess it's supposed to maybe, you know, add to that immersion experience and make you feel more like you're a part of the world, you know, and it seems, you know, and I think this is a problem because it doesn't, you know, the systems they implement, you know, are so complex that not even the developers understand how these systems work. And that's why we don't see, you know, any major changes, is because, you know, the developers don't know how it works. It's too complex for even them to figure out because they've never done the system before either. You know, and when you do that every expansion in the name of, you know, immersion, you know, it doesn't, you know, you end up with, you know, unless you get it right the first time, you know, from the outset, you're never gonna, you know, correct the class, basically. And it, you know, it does technically solve, you know, this problem of power progression and scalability if you break a system every expansion, and you know, so like, if you design like the Soulbind system, Shadowlands, not to scale past Shadowlands, you don't need to worry about scaling it over 3 expansions. You could just scale it for 1, and it kind of, you don't have to worry about it, getting unruly. The problem is that, you throw out all your work that you did in correcting the errors of it also with that expansion. So, like Fire Mage loses Memory of Lucid Dreams, even though it was really a critical part of the spec that made it playable in the first place. And so it just feels awful. It's a really large sword. Anyway, I don't know why that's popping up there. It's interesting. And they also seem to be kind of looking at it to kind of have like a good design. Like good design seems to kind of trump, player fun basically, and that was part of the reason why they wanted Azerite armor. Was because it was like they thought, oh well, these artifact weapons are all kind of front loaded, and there's no back end progression, power progression. That's what they wanted, and the problem is the players don't care that it was front loaded. They just recognize, hey, this is fun. This makes my class fun to play, and so I'm gonna have fun playing my class. We didn't really care. The developers cared. The players I don't think really cared at all. That was front loaded. They just made the game fun, and we liked it. But apparently we can't have a fun game. We have to have a immersive and elegantly designed game, and if it's fun or not, it's just a byproduct of it. Seems to be the mindset. So I guess that's enough rambling on that. Anyway, moving into how I think these can be fixed. I think give up on coming up with an elegant / immersive design. Like I was just talking about, the players don't care about it. Only developers care about it. Sorry, we just don't care how elegant or immersive it is. We care, if we log on to a game, do we have fun playing that game? Instead, I would take the Marie Kondo approach to game design, which is basically you log onto a character or a max level character, you use a spell or ability, and you ask yourself, did this ability spark joy? Do I want to press this ability again? If it doesn't spark joy, then you need to either eliminate that ability or redesign it so that it does spark joy, so that you do want to press that ability again and again and again. And if it does, spark joy and you like it, then as you iterate on the class design, keep rechecking to make sure that it still sparks joy, and that you still want to press it, that you didn't make some change that somehow made the ability not good anymore. And then I would also simplify power progression. Like I was talking earlier, like new systems, they take time to understand how exactly they're going to work, how they should work, and not only because they're new, but because at least the ones we've gotten in the last couple expansions have been pretty complex also. So something like my current main is a demon hunter. I think there's like 4 to 5 different abilities that can modify Chaos Strike. Like I can meta and turn it, and it becomes Annihilation. I think there's 2 talents that directly affect it. There's a legendary and there's a conduit that also affect that one ability. So if you want to add yet another thing, and the legendary, the legendary and the conduit are new this expansion. And so if you wanted to like implement like a class set next season that modifies Chaos Strike, you have to go back and you have to retune and recheck all those other things to make sure that it's not doing something that's broken, or it's going to be broken, or it's going to make it ridiculously overpowered. And so the result is we don't get changes that we should get to classes because developers don't understand how the system even works, because they've never seen it either. just like we have. We're learning together with the developers how the system works. And and so we end up with broken, instead of getting classes fixed like in vanilla, where the developers did a major overhaul of every class, because they knew the system was simple enough that they could see how it worked. They knew how it worked. They knew, what modifications they could make, what they should make with, without breaking everything, or without making, breaking something or creating something that was, overpowered. And that's not possible when you have a complex system like soulbinds plus legendaries like you do in Shadowlands. You can't make the changes because you don't know how everything works together, and devoting development time to figure out how everything works together is just something that's not possible. That sword's moving. Interesting. Anyway, so in the end, I guess I think the basic solution is the developers have to get back to prioritizing fun over design. Like, the only person that cares about the design is another developer. The players, we don't really care about how well designed, or if it's elegant, or if it has whatever front end or back end progression. Like, if anything, in players, we don't like back end progression. We want everything front loaded. Like the talent trees were all front loaded progression. Like, once you got to level 60, you got no new talent points. And we liked it that way because it gave us something to shoot for. It's like, okay, I'm gonna level this class to 60. I'm gonna get all these talent points and be as powerful as I can from that perspective. And then I'm gonna go try to do Molten Core and Blackwing Lair and all of these other raids, because that's where my power comes from, and I have these abilities that are really fun to press that I want to press, and that's content where I can press these abilities in. And get away from this design, or this immersive kind of experience where you're trying to make me feel a certain way or feel like I'm in the world, and just let me have fun with my character in the world, is I think kind of the way to go there. Anyway, if you've listened to this so far, thank you. I will be... this is the end of the video. Like I said in the beginning, if you enjoyed it, do not subscribe, because I do not post videos like this often. The point of this channel really is just to post stuff for my guildies, so that they can see our boss kills if they weren't there, and we can use them for recruitment purposes and stuff like that. Don't really do videos like this. So if you did like it, don't subscribe, share it instead on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Discord. Share it with other influencers, WoW influencers who are prominent and have large followings, to get their reactions to it, but do not subscribe if you like it. Hopefully this was informative. Hopefully shed some light on how WoW got to this current state of shambles. I don't think it's all bad. I think they have done some things good, like the like the streamlining of the talent trees was good. I think the level squish was good overall. I think because now if you see the talent tree, like I'm getting new talents every 10, and then 5, every 5 levels or so, basically, for the most part. So it's not all bad. I think a lot of the talents could use some work. I think they could maybe get rid of these rows and go back to like a tree, like a kind of like we have with soulbinds, and you could maybe do like a smaller tree, maybe with like 5 or so abilities or something, and that way you could scale it a lot longer. But so anyway, whatever, I'll stop rambling now. Share this video with others if you liked it. Do not subscribe, because I don't make videos like this a lot. And thanks for watching. Bye.